they were racially inferior. They were told they lacked the intelligence to handle modern fighter aircraft. They were not supposed to succeed. But in the face of bigotry and ignorance, the Tuskegee Airmen prevailed. With skill and bravery, this all-black fighter squadron shattered racist stereotypes. And their exploits became the stuff of legend. Now you're in the cockpit as red-tailed Mustangs take on swarms of Nazi fighters. Experience the battle. Dissect the tactics. Relive the dogfights of the Tuskegee Airmen. July 18, 1944. 66 red-tailed Mustangs of the 332nd Fighter Group, the Tuskegee Airmen, soar over the Po River Valley in northern Italy. Their mission? Escort B-17 Flying Fortresses on their way to bomb an airbase in Memmingen, Austria. Flying with 302 Squadron is Captain Wendell Pruitt and his wingman, Lieutenant Lee Archer.
Pruitt was my man. That's it. If he'd gone to hell, I would have followed him.
Pruitt and Archer are known as the Gruesome Twosome. Pruitt, a gifted and supremely confident fighter pilot. Archer, a loyal wingman with great skill and determination of his own.
We used to fly above the bombers and sort of weave over them because we were a little faster than them and were a little higher, less resistance.
Suddenly, someone calls out enemy aircraft at 3 o'clock low. Heading for the bombers, a single flight of 4 ME-109s. The Gruesome Twosome are sent into action. Archer follows Pruitt through a wide, swooping turn.
The purpose of me being a wingman, I always thought, was to keep Pruitt's back end from getting in trouble.
Pruitt singles out one of the ME-109s. The German spots the danger and brakes. The Mustangs turn in pursuit, straining against the pull of G. Archer fights to stay in trail of his lead through the wild maneuvers.
Pruitt followed him in a turn, and then when he straightened out, he'd make a little short burst.
Tracers streak past the 109. The German brakes. The Gruesome Twosomes stick with him, but soon Archer senses that something is wrong.
The other aircraft straightened out 3 times, and Pruitt didn't fire. And so I pulled up next to him, and said, what's going on?
Pruitt signals that his guns are jammed. He motions for Archer to take the lead. Archer throttles up and closes on the enemy. The 109 jinks and dives, but to no avail.
I made the burst, hit him. Then the second burst hit in his right wing, and he bailed out.
It is Lee Archer's first victory.
I circled him until he landed. And he was standing there with his chute, and I came down over him. I rigged on my wings first, and then pulled up into the slow rolls before I turned off. It was all about how I thought about aerial combat in those times.
But back with the rest of the 332nd, the fight is still raging. As many as 30 more ME-109s are attacking the bombers from all directions. Lieutenant Clarence Lucky Lester hears his flight lead call over the radio. Bandits, 3 o'clock high.
So at that point, flight leader calls punch tanks. That means drop your tanks, let's head after the enemy.
Lucky and the rest of his flight bank right on an intercept course. But then, Lucky spots an even better target. A flight of 109s slightly below him.
That training kicks in and reflexes take over and you're an animal. And you're out for the kill. You're on the hunt. You're going to get it done.
The Germans have not yet spotted him. At 200 feet, he unleashes a torrent of machine gun fire.
The airplane starts to smoke and it explodes. Pieces are flying all over. Debris coming at him. He's dodging the debris.
Lucky bobs and weaves through the flaming wreckage. Miraculously, his aircraft is unscathed.
Off to his right, probably just with the swivel of the head, left and right, he notices another 109. He peels over to the right, gets behind this second 109, and he gives him the works.
The 109 shudders and smokes. Lucky deftly rolls over the top of the doomed German. He watches as the pilot throws back the canopy and leaps away. Lester has downed 2 aircraft, but the fight has carried him far away from the bombers. Skimming the peaks of the Italian Alps, he spots a 109 at 2 o'clock low.
Altitude is a key with fighter pilots. They call it being on the perch. Like a bird on a perch, you see something down below, you dive on it. Therefore, with Lester being on the perch, he had the advantage. He could get in on that Messerschmitt before the Messerschmitt knew what was happening.
Lucky rolls into a high-speed diving attack. His Merlin engine screams as the Mustang accelerates past 350 miles per hour. His finger closes around the trigger. A volley of tracers arc across the nose of the 109. The German brakes hard, rolling inverted in an attempt to evade the American. But the move is ill-advised. He's far too low. Lucky Lester watches in stunned amazement as the 109 slams into a hillside. Lester soars over the wreckage, exhilarated by the intense dogfight. Alone, he's accounted for 3 enemy aircraft. The rest of the 332nd downed 9 more for a total of 12. Their most successful day of air combat to date. It is a milestone for the Tuskegee Airmen, a fighter group whose battle against the German Luftwaffe is only half the story. Deemed by the War Department as inferior to whites and unable to handle the intricacies of modern weaponry, black soldiers were relegated to support roles. Flying fighter planes was out of the question.
It was thought over the objective of Hap Arnold, who was in charge of the Air Force at that time, that blacks didn't have the ability to do complicated things, of leadership, etc. We knew that was wrong.
Under pressure from the black press, the NAACP, and even his own wife, President Roosevelt relented in 1939 and ordered the civilian pilot training program to be open to black students who wished to become civilian pilots. In December of 1940, the War Department followed suit and appropriated $1 million to build a suitable base to train black airmen at the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. They called the effort to train these men an experiment. The men bonded immediately, imbued with a sense of common purpose and racial pride.
Although the Army didn't believe in our capability, they didn't change the training standards, and that was a plus for us, that we were able to meet the standards and perform successfully.
And World War II gave us a chance to go into combat units and do a first-class job so that the larger population would realize how silly and stupid segregation was.
In April of 1943, the first full squadron of African-American fighter pilots, the 99th Fighter Squadron, received orders for deployment to the Mediterranean Theater of Operations. By June of 1944, the 99th had joined 3 other all-black fighter squadrons. Together, they comprised the 332nd Fighter Group, known to history as the Tuskegee Airmen. August 24th, 1944. American B-24 and B-17 bombers of the 5th Bomb Wing approached their target, WWII Airfield in Czechoslovakia. Escorting them are 52 red-tailed Mustangs of the 332nd Fighter Group, the Tuskegee Airmen. Among them is Lieutenant Charles McGee, flying a P-51C nicknamed Kitten, after his wife. McGee leads a flight of 4.
We were out to the side and slightly above the bombers. Our squadron was on that date operating, as I say, out to the side, weaving back and forth sufficient to be able to look around at all angles, not just flying a straight line.
McGee will soon square off against a battle-hardened foe. Over a German airfield set ablaze by American bombs, McGee will find himself in the fight of his life. A fierce encounter against a tenacious enemy that will test his combat prowess as never before. August 24th, 1944. Lieutenant Charles McGee of the 332nd Fighter Group, the Tuskegee Airmen, flies escort for American heavy bombers. Their target is a German airfield in Pardubice, Czechoslovakia. McGee and the rest of the 332nd have battled hatred and ignorance for the privilege of flying combat. Each mission is a chance to prove their worth to a bigoted military hierarchy. As Pardubice comes into view on the horizon, McGee searches for the enemy.
Attacking a aerodrome like that was a great way to scare up some enemy opposition. That's what happened.
McGee's squadron commander calls out 2 FW-190s at 4 o'clock high. McGee and his flight turn to engage the 190s. They're about to go toe-to-toe with Nazi Germany's most advanced single-engine fighter. The Focke-Wulf 190 is a tough and agile opponent. heavily armed with 2 13mm machine guns and 4 20mm cannons. McGee flies an early model P-51 Mustang, the P-51C. Even though it lacks the refinements of later Mustang models, it is still a formidable fighter aircraft. With a top speed of 440 miles per hour and armament consisting of 4 50-caliber machine guns mounted in the wings. McGee's P-51C is faster and more maneuverable, but the FW-190 is more rugged and has better armament. The 190s are here. McGee and his men are here. McGee's best option is a slicing right turn that will position him directly on his opponent's tail.
I took off after the plane to try to get a position to fire on him, and the plane continued in a dive.
The Mustangs close with the enemy. But as soon as the 190s spot the danger, they split up. McGee takes his wingman, Roger Romine, with him after one of the fleeing Germans. The desperate German pilot fights for his life, rolling, diving, jinking, anything to shake the Mustang.
They're doing a little turning, we call it jinking around, to get us either to overrun them or lose us. I was able to control speed enough to stay, but trying to close to firing range, because you're just wasting ammunition if you try to fire too soon.
McGee exploits the P-51's speed advantage and closes on his enemy. But the dogfight is getting dangerously close to Pardubice.
The German pilot dove towards the airfield and led McGee across the airfield, which was by this point burning from the bombing raid. And again, the idea was for the German pilot not to engage McGee in some air-to-air combat, but to drag him across an area where the German flak could open fire and perhaps take out the American fighter on his tail.
Flak bursts all around him. The anti-aircraft gunners are zeroing in. McGee will soon be forced to break off. But suddenly, the German makes a critical mistake.
He made the fatal turn going around to the right, which appeared to me he might have been trying to escape through some of the smoke and so on that was coming from the field, but it was the wrong turn because I happened to be right in the right position at that time to effectively fire on him.
McGee opens fire. His 450 cals make quick work of the German. The 190 shudders sickeningly, then rolls. The wounded Focke-Wulf hits the ground in a brilliant explosion.
That was my first victory, and of course, right then your adrenaline is pumping pretty well, and like I say, you know there's fire from the ground, and so the idea was to not fly straight past, but keep moving, but flying away at low altitude to get away from the guns that were around the airport.
Romine, who had been separated from McGee through the chase, rejoins his flight lead. The victorious Mustang pilots return to their position in the bomber stream. The 332nd continued flying escort for bombers through the rest of the summer of 1944. Their reputation for disciplined and effective fighter escort grew.
Stars and Stripes, which is a military newspaper that came out every day, would talk about our missions, and they would talk about the all-Negro 332nd Fighter Group. and how they had protected the bombers and how we were doing such a great job in protecting the bombers.
The 332nd flew mission after mission, protecting bombers of the 15th Air Force as they struck railroad bridges in northern Italy and oil refineries in Romania. They were sent all over Eastern Europe to strafe airfields and marshalling yards. But German air activity had decreased, and sightings were rare. The Tuskegee Airmen went the entire month of September without scoring a victory. But in October '44, the Luftwaffe returned in force. On the 12th, the gruesome twosome of Wendell Pruitt and Lee Archer will be back in action. In the midst of a sprawling dogfight, Archer will make history. He will become the first and only Tuskegee Airman to make ace. October 12, 1944. A squadron of red-tailed P-51 Mustangs of the 332nd Fighter Group soar over Lake Balaton in southern Hungary. After completing an escort mission, they're returning to base in Italy. Among them is Captain Wendell Pruitt and his wingman, Lieutenant Lee Archer, the gruesome twosome, as they are known. As they reach the southern tip of the lake, tiny specks appear on the horizon, a swarm of German Me-109s.
There were more German airplanes in the air than I've ever seen before. Kind of made a little side decision, well, this might be it.
Pruitt, Archer, and the rest of the Red Tails don't flinch.
We didn't run or anything like that. We said, okay, they're up here. It's as many of them as it is of us. We'll take them on.